Hello, welcome, Matt. We are jumping in my group. It's not brand surgery for everybody watching, for everybody that is going to watch. Welcome and thank you for being here to talk about podcasts because podcasts are huge right now. So before I ask you a couple questions that they asked,
Okay.
can you tell me a little bit about what you do and why you love podcasts so much?
Okay. So I run a podcast launch and production company. So that's all we do. We produce them for business coaches, consultants, and thought leader types. And I have a team of people all around the world that are specialists, including someone that's near and dear to both of our hearts, who works with a lot of our best clients. And so I'm able to, I've built kind of the system for managing the agency to the point where I manage the entire business in about 4 hours a week, which leaves me time to do other fun things like host my own podcast, which I very much enjoy. I enjoy podcasting because I love the battle of ideas. So I like talking to really smart people and going deep on ideas and concepts and stories. And that's the part that I really find fascinating. So for me, it's like podcasting not only fits a specific function in marketing and growing a business, but it's also just the most fun way to grow a business.
It is, and you don't have to wear clothes to do it either. Like you
That's
could
right.
just
I'm not wearing pants right now. No,
I'm
that
not
is a
wearing
lie.
pants
But I
right
will
now.
say they are technically optional in the podcasting world.
Yeah, nobody would know. Even
That's
if you
true.
were. You don't
That's
have a
true.
mirror behind you, nobody
That's
cares.
why you won't find any mirrors in any room where I'm recording. Right?
Mirrors behind
You don't want the mirror in the back to give away that you're not wearing pants.
Don't excite everybody watching, okay? You're making everybody really excited right now. Uh, I feel like podcasts just kind of blew up too all of a sudden. I know they've been around for, I don't know, a little while, but I feel like all of a sudden it was just like, forget YouTube. Let's make a podcast. What do you think people need to know before they start one? Like, don't just jump into it and think that you're going to do it. What do you need to know? Like, what should you be very sure of before you do it?
Well, I'll go right after the biggest misconception, which is that you can still launch a Joe Rogan style interview show and blow up. The days of that are long past. It's just like anything else. When you have an oversupply of something, you got to do something different. And so to me, like the podcasts that are breaking through right now are ones that are more focused. You can still do interviews. I mean, it's part of our system that you do interviews. It's not about not being able to talk to people. It's about how focused are you? Who are you interviewing? What do they have in common? Does your podcast revolve around one central idea that people are they know what to expect when they show up, and they know what they're going to take away, whatever that is for them. And if you get those things right, then you can still have lots and lots of success in podcasting right now. But the idea that you're going to just launch a show where you talk to whoever about whatever you feel like, and it's going to blow up and you're going to be the next Joe Rogan, good luck.
God, oh my gosh, they're long. They're really long.
They're insanely long. I've never listened to a single Joe Rogan episode in my life, and I've been listening to podcasts since 2009. I'm a huge fan of Adam Carolla. I don't know that I've ever listened to an entire episode of Adam Carolla's podcast. What I mostly listen to is the parts that interest me.
Yeah.
And then especially with Joe Rogan, I tend to watch the clips on YouTube where they pull out what they think are the best clips of the show, which sounds reasonable to me. Yeah, I'm not going to sit there and listen for 3 hours to something.
No.
Ever.
I
got stuff to do.
Dan used to while driving, right? Like you listen to his whole episode when you listen to it, don't you? Yeah. Like till 3 o'clock in the morning. He's like, let's start one at 12. Why not?
Makes sense.
Do you think there's an ideal time? I know there's different types of podcasts, and obviously some people are going to do 20-minute long ones. Some people are going to do hour-long ones. What do you think is the ideal amount of time that people focus?
Well, if you're talking about a business audience and you're selling to entrepreneurs and business owners, I think an interview that's around 20 to 25 minutes is the sweet spot. I think if it's the right guest and the energy level is high and they're just bam, 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 bam content. Like I've got clients like that they're just super on the disc test. They're 99D, 99I, pedal to the metal all the time, spouting content. Those people you can interview for 45 minutes and hang people's attention. Any longer, when it's not the right type of person, keep it around 20, 25, or just record whatever you want and then edit it down later till it's around that size. So it's not like you have to try to squeeze everything into a short time frame. You can still just record a casual, relaxed conversation, but then you're going to have to do the work afterwards of deciding
Yeah.
what to release and what
What's
not.
good and what's not good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the hard part. I don't know if I'd be able to do that. Like, I can't cut
It's
that
just a
out.
little
That's
extra work.
important. like the part talking about not wearing pants. I'm not going to cut that out. I think that's good. That's good
I think it should
material.
stay in. It's incredibly valuable content.
Going back to the Joe Rogan thing, you said that you prefer to watch clips of the important part. That brings me to talking about repurposing, because I talk about that a lot with the people in my group, and I love repurposing because I think if you don't repurpose, you are going to burn out and
Yeah.
you're going to get very tired of doing what you're doing. So do you have what's the easiest way to repurpose a podcast? I know the answer to this question, but
So the easy answer to this is to do what we're doing. So we're on Zoom, so it's recorded on video, right? The easiest answer is to take that and pull out a 2 to 3 minute clip for social media, especially if you have a following on Facebook, which then you can then pay like $1 a day for 7 days
yeah.
to just put that video in front of more people and start building up a warm audience, which you can retarget and do some other things with later. In the Micro Famous book, I talk about like the third stage and just the whole kind of strategy is, after you getting featured on podcasts and then you host your own show, the next step after that is to start taking clips from both of those things and repurposing them for social media for exactly the reason that you mentioned. I've watched way too many people attempt to keep up with what Gary Vee tells them to do, and they end up burning out. And it don't do them any good. Like, consistency is what actually gets you trust and respect over time. If you're constantly like this on social media, where you're super active for a few weeks and then you disappear, and nobody knows what to think of you, you're not going to build up any trust that way anyway. So you might as well only commit to the things that you can do consistently, and repurposing helps you be consistent when you don't feel like it.
I say that a lot too. I talk about consistency pretty much every other day in my group, because especially with social media, people are like, okay, I'm going to post every day, or I'm going to do a podcast episode every day, or I'm going to go live every day. And then you get like a weekend and you're like, I don't want to do it today. And then people are expecting that. And the consistency is, I feel like that's a huge part of podcasting. If you're not going to do it exactly when you say you're going to do it, then people are going to lose interest. But
yeah, you've got some leeway. I mean, we've got clients that, for example, one of our clients went down from posting a weekly show to a bi-weekly show. And Dan and I were digging into the numbers on the back end, and they had 0 drop in their downloads.
That's awesome.
So they get just as many downloads in the off weeks. Now, the key to that is that she's consistent on social media and consistently talks about the podcast.
Yeah.
So she cut the number of podcasts she was doing in half, and her downloads stayed the same because she didn't also disappear off of social media. She was still consistently telling people, hey, go subscribe to my podcast. And so her downloads are consistent. So you don't have to be consistent everywhere, but you do have to have a place where you are relentlessly consistent, whatever that means for you, so that people know what to expect. And then in other places, you can dabble.
Yeah.
So if Facebook is your place, be consistent on Facebook. And then if you want to dabble a little bit in Instagram just to try it out, perfectly fine. But people have to have a place from you, whatever your one place is, where you are consistent.
Do you think there's a huge benefit? We were talking, Dan and I were talking about this, that it seems like there's a really big benefit to having a Facebook community kind of connected to your podcast. Do you see that, I mean, you have the Micro Famous community. Is that tied to your podcast, or is that just tied to that brand, basically? I feel like
that is an interesting question, because I have not seen it work well.
Really?
Yes. I don't say I've got a friend of mine that runs what has become a wildly successful podcast. And the Facebook group community did not grow with the podcast. The podcast grew completely independently.
Interesting.
The Facebook group is still under 2,000 people. They are two separate animals. I probably will not, I'm considering, like, closing down my Facebook community, because the skill set to run and grow a community, which you know from being in Dana Malstaff's world,
Mm-hmm.
what she teaches you to do in terms of a Facebook community is not easy, and it doesn't come easily to everyone. It's a
Yeah.
different skill set from hosting a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I think there needs to be a place where you can engage with your audience. And I talk about that in the book, just like picking out whatever your one place is.
Yeah.
And for me, it's my personal Facebook profile. I've got 10,000 people that follow me on Facebook. I could try to move all those people into a group and the group would probably grow, but I have great luck connecting with people already. When I do a Facebook Live, it has great reach, and I have people reach out and want to schedule consultations for the podcast service and stuff like that, to the point where I've got my one place. And so I dabbled with the Facebook group, and I've dabbled with LinkedIn, and like
Mm-hmm.
each of them has a place in my ecosystem, but Facebook is my one place.
See, I try to hammer that into people's heads. They think they need to be everywhere all the time. And it's just not the case. Like, talk about another way to burn out. Like,
yes,
you're gonna kill yourself.
Well, here's the thing. This is I think this is the dirty little secret fear behind that drive to be everywhere, which is that no one place is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they're afraid to cut themselves off from the other options. Like, yeah, but what about Instagram? People are whispering, the bottom line is you will never hear about the failures. You're only going to hear about the successes. So if you think you're missing out, what you're really missing out on is your own fear, right? Your fear of missing out on some other platform, and the fear of going all in on one place, and just not having what it takes to grow that one place. But the best people, the people that are the most successful to grow the biggest businesses, are the ones that are the most relentlessly focused. They're not everywhere. Most of the people that I know that are millionaires, you can barely find them on social media, number one.
Mm-hmm.
They're using social media effectively. They're not on social media all the time. And there's a huge difference. I picked up a book the other day by a guy that runs a Facebook ads agency. And he said, I deleted the Facebook app off my phone, and I don't use Facebook as a consumer between the hours of 8 and 5 at all.
Smart.
Yeah.
So smart.
Yeah, like the only value of using Facebook as a consumer or Instagram as a consumer is if you don't know how to use it and you're trying to learn. Once you get beyond that level, the only value of social media to your business, of being on it at all, is to publish content, engage with people, and move people into a personal conversation where you can get them on the phone and talk about what you do. It's the only value.
Funnel them in. Dang,
we all need a good funneling.
Funneling, I feel like a lot of the people in my group are very confused about funneling. And I don't blame them, because I've seen a lot of really complicated, really complicated funnels. And I can understand where the hesitation is. But I think a lot of people are worried, and they're afraid to start doing it, because it's just one more thing to do. And I think they need to really focus on who they're talking to. And a lot of people skip that. They don't know who they're creating this content for. So then that's why they think they need to be everywhere, because, these people are here, but also these people are over here. And it's just, don't do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah. There's many evils stem from lack of focus. That's one of them. The fear of funneling is another. From everybody that I've worked with and seen, the people that I've seen build multi-six and then turn them into 7-figure businesses, they don't have a bunch of lead sources. They don't have a bunch of different ways they get leads. They don't have a bunch of different people that they work with. They figure out who the right people are, and then they get really good at delivering something that they really want. And you realize that most of them didn't have a sales funnel, quote unquote, until they were already making multiple 6 figures. And I think that's something that a lot of really good business owners have in common. You don't need a sales funnel, anything more than, let's say, just a sales page and a way to send people there. You don't need anything more complicated than that to make well over 6 figures. Now, if you then want to scale back so that you don't have to do the sales anymore, and that you don't have to be so personally involved on social media to generate those 6 figures, that's when, once you've already got your feet underneath you, then you can start putting a portion of your time into building some sort of funnel, which the best way I've heard it described is that it just, like, stop calling it a funnel and just call it a sales system. That's all it is. It's a system that sells people into whatever you want them to buy. So if you think about it that way, all it is it's a certain path that you're sending people down, but you don't even need to worry about that until you're making well into the six figures. And then by that time, you can afford to pay some people to help. You can afford to hire a coach to guide you through it. You can afford all the software. Like I think there's a huge mistake that people make of not knowing anything or having some sort of expertise in something and going straight to, I'm going to build a big audience and sell them a low price product. Unbelievable that like, it's not that it can't be done, but it is a path for a lot of frustration.
Oh yeah.
Like if you work the process that I've seen my clients go through, which is take your expertise, and the first thing you do is get a handful of people to pay you a lot of money to do it. Then you get a slightly bigger group of people to pay you less money to do it. And then you move progressively as you build your audience. And then once you have the big audience, then you can go, okay, there's this whole audience of people. I've only been able to serve a fraction of them, but I've made great money doing it. And I have all these testimonials. Now I'm going to flip the switch and I'm going to offer them something that's $50 a month because the people are already there. It's the folks that try to offer the low price thing to an audience they don't have yet.
Yeah.
Man, that's a hard road to go. And I wish people would really stop doing it. And I wish people would stop buying courses that teach them how to do it and promise them that that's the future, because that's not the future.
That's like preaching to the choir. I feel that way almost every day.
Because you see the hurt and the pain that causes people, the frustration that it causes people.
Waste of money too. Waste of money, waste of time. And they're going backwards. They're trying to go backwards, and it doesn't work that way.
No, you're exactly right. It's like if you tried to go into real estate by buying a brokerage. Never sold a home, never showed a house to a buyer. I'm going to buy a brokerage, and make 5% off of every deal. Really?
Hello.
Good luck.
You only live once. It's fine. Just try it.
Exactly. It's a good way to lose a lot of money.
See what happens. Hey, if you have a lot of money, it doesn't matter. I'm just kidding.
The best way to become a millionaire is to start with 10 million, as the old adage goes.
Bad advice. Here's the bad advice portion of the thing.
Yes, exactly.
And going back to podcasts, I think a lot of people want to monetize their podcast. Do you think that's like the end goal? Like you're going to be consistent? No. Good. Yeah.
No, I would remove that from the vocabulary of everyone if I could. And I get that question a lot too. How do I monetize a podcast? The first thing I want to do is smack them in the face and say, stop trying to monetize the podcast, because you're doing that at the expense of your business.
Yeah.
So the people that I know, especially the clients that are really successful and stick with us long term, they have a podcast, they have a business, and we figured out how to align the podcast and the business really well so that the podcast creates demand for the business. That's the best way to monetize a podcast in the business world. Again, it goes back to, you are not Joe Rogan. So the idea that you're going to build a huge audience and then sell sponsorships, I can tell you from experience, is very hard to do.
Yeah.
And I have a podcast, Real Estate Uncensored, that has well over 1 million downloads. We've dabbled in all kinds of sponsorships with SaaS companies, with B2B companies, with lead gen companies, with people that sell low price products. We've done affiliates. We've done it all. It's all a pain in the butt, and it's all way more effort than you think. And the best thing we did was stop promoting everybody else and only promote what we had to offer.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And I've seen it happen with a lot of other people too, where they have no idea how much goes into running sponsorships and how much they have to do, all the effort, and they have no idea what it takes to build that type of audience. And so the best thing to do is stop trying.
Yeah. Focus
on your own business and use your podcast to talk about your business to the point where people that listen to your show want to hire you.
So smart. Dan's over. I don't even think he's listening, but I think when a lot of people go into it and they think, okay, I'm going to make sponsorships on this, instead of thinking I'm going to create a product that I'm going to then pitch to my audience that I've grown off of that. And again, backwards.
Yes. Yeah. Just to give people a sneak peek, like Tim Ferriss at one point kind of released the numbers for his show, and he makes something like $25 per 1,000 downloads per show.
Okay.
So if you consider that the average podcast, especially in the business world, gets maybe 200 to 500 downloads, you're talking about $12 an episode.
Mm-hmm.
So by all means, like, the sponsorships are out there. So if you get a couple hundred downloads a show, that somebody will be willing to pay you for it. But it might make you a couple $100 a month, and that's not even going to offset your production costs. So why bother?
Yeah, I feel like I've said this before, unless you have a huge team of people doing things for you, so you can put out massive amounts of content like Gary Vee, like Joe Rogan. Like, why are you making yourself feel bad about it? Gary Vee's thing, his whole hustle thing I feel like it's kind of dangerous. Like, it's a dangerous kind of culture to speak out into the world. I don't really like the whole hustle thing, because you're telling people to hustle, and you've got Dan's laughing over here, so I'm guessing you have an opinion about it already. But I just, you have probably 80 people working on your content, and you're telling people you need to hustle more. You need to post. It's like, I would if I had 80 people helping me, But,
well, and I don't doubt that Gary Vee hustles. That doesn't stop him from the fact that he has 19 people on his personal brand content team, let alone the people in his agency. So yes, there's a reason why Gary Vee is pumping out so much content. But I don't doubt that if Gary Vee started over today, he'd spend 15 hours a day on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do that. And most likely, if you're listening to this, you probably don't want to do that either, because I don't know about you, but I started a business to have a life I enjoy, not a life I hate.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I one of the most hilarious / irritating things I saw recently was Seth Godin, who's one of my heroes, came to Gary Vee's office at one point, and they did an episode of the Gary Vee show together. I've never seen Seth Godin interrupted so much in my entire life. Gary Vee can't sit still. It was like somebody injected Gary Vee with pure heroin before that interview. But in between Gary Vee interrupting him, Seth Godin said something really good, as he's prone to do, which is that, look, the hustle on social media allows you to hide. It allows you to hide from doing the real work of talking deeply with the people that you want to serve to find out what their frustrations and challenges really are, and then coming up with an amazing, interesting, different, compelling way to solve that problem for them. Because if you do that, it's not going to be hard to find that next group of people who want to pay you, and that group of people is going to tell another group of people, and so on.
Yep.
And I think one of the big shifts, I think one of the questions you can ask yourself is, am I the one talking about myself on social media, or am I making something that's worth other people talking about me on social media? I'd much rather other people talk about me than I have to talk about myself. And if all you're doing on social media is talking about yourself, that's an indication that the strategy behind the hustle is not very good.
See, that wasn't laughable. That was a very good response to that. He seriously was laughing as soon as I mentioned Gary Vee. I'm like, oh God, what did I just open there?
Well, I think what he's probably talking about is there's a section, it might be it's either the third or fourth chapter, where I break down the Simon Sinek strategy versus the Gary Vaynerchuk strategy, and why microfamous is different from both of them. Yeah. So I have very strong, and that doesn't mean Gary Vee is not a great guy who hasn't done a lot, and he gets a lot of people off the couch and taking action. Yeah. The problem is, if you stay in that mode, all you're going to do is spend the next 5 years beating your head against a wall, trying to create more content for Instagram, wondering why nobody's paying you.
Ugh. It's the vicious cycle. And I've seen a lot of people quit because of it.
Yes. And that's the negative side effect. Now, there will be a lot of people that quit regardless, but when you're speaking to an audience of beginners, and your goal is just to get them off the couch and do something, then that's what your message has to be. Yeah. So for anybody listening, that's the tough part about building a general audience and selling them a low price thing, is you're forced to speak to beginners, right? Big audience of beginners. As you start to shrink inward, you get intermediate, and then you get people that are advanced. The people that have the most money are the people that are advanced. Those are the ones that they have the most money to pay you. They are the most successful in general. They're disciplined. They know how to take action. So when you work together on something, they actually get stuff done. Yeah. Right. Those are the people that are the most fun to work with. Those are the people that I work with in my agency, because I don't want to hate my life. Right. So if you work with the people that are advanced, this small group of an audience, and you work with them first, then you can create maybe a group coaching program or a high dollar product or a program for the intermediate people. Yeah. Then years later, once you get all the kinks worked out, then maybe you go to a general audience and say, hey, I've got this low priced version of the thing that I've already been successfully doing for 5 years. Would you like to buy it? And you'll have people lining up to buy
Oh,
it.
yeah.
If you try to shortcut it and go straight to the big audience with a low price thing, what's your credibility? Where's your testimonials? Where's all the people that believe in you, that post about you on social media already? It doesn't exist because you didn't go through that same process. And you got to realize that all the people that you see now, the Simon Sinek's of the world, the Seth Godins, that's what they did. They worked with companies or people first. They expanded out to intermediate, and they started doing speaking engagements and workshops. And then they came out with a low price product for a larger audience. And that's probably when you first came across them.
Yep.
Because that's when you needed to come across them. But that doesn't mean they didn't go through the hard years of doing that first.
Look at that.
And I say hard years, but they're not hard years. They're just, they're just being patient.
Just regular years.
Regular years.
Not everyone is patient, unfortunately.
No, we have a lot of that. I got interviewed by a guy that I love him to death. He's an awesome guy. But he basically asked me the question. He's like, I want exponential growth now. How do I get it? I'm like, stop. Just stop. That's terrible. That's a terrible question.
Years.
Stop trying to do that.
You can't.
It's like writing a hit song. It's the only way to write a hit song. You can't grit your teeth and try harder and write a hit song. You just got to write more songs. And eventually maybe one of them will be a hit.
Yes.
Bombs I knew that analogy was just for Dan.
He's not listening, but he'll listen later.
Not listening.
He's shaking his head like he can hear you.
Have to pass that piece of advice along.
You're what? Not good at lip reading? No, he added a little music in there. Just a little music talk. Right. Musicians. So before we wrap it up, do you have any advice for someone? Obviously you have advice for someone wanting to start a podcast, but what is your advice for wanting to start, people that want to incorporate a podcast into their brand?
Okay. So the best advice is to think about who are the most valuable, let's say 5,000 people in your market. So if you think about, if I gave you a Facebook account and the max that you could do with that Facebook account is grow it to the 5,000 friend limit, but they were the right 5,000 people that could make you 6 or 7 figures a year, who are those 5,000 people? And then ask yourself, what is the podcast that they wish existed and they can't find? Because that's the question. That's the $64,000 question. If you can answer that, you'll have no trouble. But my personal belief is that most of the battles over whether a podcast grows or not are lost before the show even hits iTunes, because they didn't answer those couple of simple questions, and they come out with a podcast that they want to do, that's fun for them to do, that has nothing to do with what the audience wants, and then they wonder why the audience doesn't share their podcast.
Talk to your audience.
Because you created a podcast for you, not them.
Exactly. Be different. Talk to the people that you want to connect with. Easier said than most people do.
Yes, it is easier said than done, because you have to deeply think about what somebody else wants. But Seth Godin is a great example. I mean, he talks about, marketing is an act of generosity when it's done right.
Yeah.
You have to be generous, which means you got to show up for other people, not just for yourself. And that is tough. But, when you show up for other people first and you give them what they want, then they are going to share the show. And then that's really fun, because then you have something that ends up being fulfilling for both the audience, and because it grows, it's also fulfilling for you. Yes. What's not fun is to start a podcast for you and be 6 or 12 months in wondering why it's not growing. And then the podcast stops being fun even for you because it's not growing. And I think that's what a lot of people get into with whether it's podcasting or not, but they end up doing something in business that's easy for them to do, but doesn't grow. And you got to understand that when it doesn't grow, it stops being fun. Being part of something that grows is fun, even if it's not exactly the thing that lights your fire necessarily right away. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. There are people within my own agency that have been with me for a long time that continue to work with me because they love working in the part of a team, and that's awesome. But outside of what they do for the team, I've showed them how they could grow their own 6-figure business, or even to start their own agency. They have not done that because whatever I told them, like the market opportunity that stuck out to me, just didn't light their fire. So they didn't chase it, which means somebody else out there is making 6 figures a year chasing that idea and probably having a great time. Meanwhile, they're sitting back and going, yeah, but that idea doesn't really grab me. It doesn't really feel like me. It doesn't resonate. But what's not fun is sitting back and not building a successful business because you're not doing something that resonates when there's a bunch of market opportunities around for people that just want, they need very specific things done, and they're willing to pay really good money to do it. And there's all kinds of those opportunities out there in very small, profitable niches, but people hold themselves back because they want something that's going to fulfill them for the next 40 years. It just doesn't, like, if you could let yourself go of worrying about that, that would go a long way towards being much more successful pastor.
Also known as micro-famous.
Yes.
So tell everybody where they can buy your book, where they can follow you, where they can listen to you, all of that good stuff.
It's all at, if you just search Microfamous, that's the easiest place. But microfamousbook.com is where you can get the book for half of Amazon, because you basically get it for free and then just cover the shipping costs. So that's the easiest one. You can also listen to the Microfamous podcast. So that's the best way to see what I'm up to in podcasting.
Yay. I love that poster behind you, by the way. When I saw the front of your book for the first time, I was like, oh, that is just graphic design geniusness.
I know. I was very, very fortunate to get introduced to the person that designed that, because I love the cover, and I love that idea of the microphone in the light bulb, because to me, podcasting is broadcasting ideas, and it's that's the most fun part for me.
And it's so simple, but it's like, bam. Well, thank you so much for coming into my group and talking about podcasting, and I hope that it has lit a few fires under some asses, maybe, possibly, I don't know, we'll find out. But I really appreciate it, and I'm super excited to post this on YouTube as well, because I repurpose.
Good. You walk the walk. Exactly.
I do.
All right. Thanks, Nicole.